There's a big election just around the corner. No, not that one. This one. Are you Team Royals or Team Chiefs? Or are you Team Skeptical or Team Totally Confused? Hello, I'm Nick Haynes. Join me for the Stadium Tax Debate coming up next.
Today, we're at a crossroads. In fact, we're here to talk about the crossroads and our intention to make it the new home of the Kansas City Royals.
What's your view on a new Royals ballpark downtown? What about those plans for Arrowhead 2.0? You've likely seen the ads and glimpsed the glossy pictures. Now get ready to hear both sides in the Stadium Tax Debate. This hour, we're partnering with the Kansas City Library and American Public Square to bring you the proponents and opponents of the stadium tax.
Support for the Stadium Tax Debate is made possible in part by the support of the William T. Kemper Foundation, Commerce Bank Trustee, AARP Kansas City, RSM, Dave and Jamie Cummings, Bob and Marlise Gorley, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize and Bank of America N.A., co-trustees, the restaurant at 1900, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Who says people are not interested in local elections? We are here in a packed Kansas City Plaza Library with about 500 of our friends and neighbors to lift the hood on the stadium tax with supporters and opponents. Sarah Torville is with us. She's the Executive Vice President of the Kansas City Royals. She's the Team Chief Commercial and Community Impact Officer. Sarah spent 20 years with Fox Sports and ESPN before joining the Royals front office. Sly James is the former two-term mayor of Kansas City and the most visible spokesperson for the Yes on Stadium Tax campaign. It was during his watch that Kansas City hosted the Major League Baseball All-Star Game shortly after the last stadium renovations were approved by voters. Now, Gary Sarnoff here in the middle won't be putting his thumb on the scale in this debate, but playing the role of umpire as someone who has extensively studied and wrote about the history and trends of baseball, a member of the Society for American Baseball Research. He comes to us from Alexandria, Virginia. Also with us, definitely putting her thumb on the scale in this debate, is Becky Nace, the former Kansas City councilwoman who now leads the committee against new Royal Stadium tactics. And Patrick Tuohy, maybe the first person to come out in print opposing the stadium tax question. He is Director of Public Policy for the Better Cities Project and a senior fellow at the Show Me Institute. We're also going to hear this hour from some other voices who have been entangled in this debate over the better part of the last year. But first, Sarah Torville, refresh our memory, if you would. Why can't the Royals just stay where they are at the Truman Sports Complex?
Well, thank you, Nick, and thanks for having us here this evening. Kansas City Royals are one of our city's greatest assets. In the fall of 2019, John Sherman assembled a group of local businessmen and women who came together to take on the responsibility of being stewards of this great franchise. That responsibility includes, of course, the focus on the field and bringing a championship trophy to Kansas City. But equally important is ensuring that we're planning for the future, that we're stewards of our community. Planning requires innovation. It requires thinking ahead in terms of investing to ensure that the product on the field, as well as the fan experience and the environment that we provide to our community, is one that's forward-thinking.
How are we going to be better off, though, as a community, just because the Royals are moving 7 miles north to the crossroads if this tax is approved?
Well, I wouldn't think about it as moving 7 miles north. It's about planning for the future and investing in an area that provides significant economic and community benefits to Kansas City. We'd be remiss if we weren't considering moving in an area where it can be a vibrant entertainment, arts, and sports district.
Sly James, we can't forget, of course, that half of the money from the stadium tax would go to the Chiefs. The Royals get all the attention, but half the money would go to them. How would we be better as a community with improvements that are going to take place at Arrowhead Stadium?
Well, first of all, Nick, it's good to see you. Good to see everybody else here. Thanks for coming tonight. But here's the deal. The bottom line is, and you hit it right on the head, the conversation seems to generate around the Royals, but this vote is to keep both teams in Jackson County. That's the baseline. How will we be better? When the Chiefs have the entire complex to themselves, they will have an extra 81 days within which to present more and more entertainment.
Couldn't they have done more concerts if they put a roof over the stadium? There's no roof as part of this.
Yeah, the roof probably would have jacked the price up by another couple billion. And not only that, I think the team enjoys playing in real weather on real grass. That's one of the home field advantages. And I think we saw that advantage on the playoff game with Miami.
How many of you have seen the ads for the Yes campaign for the new stadium tax? Yeah, we've seen those ads, haven't you? And one of the claims here is that we'll grow small businesses, create good-paying jobs, lock in more than $1 billion in private investment, and with no new taxes. What's not to like, Becky Nace?
Factually, legally, the ballot language says it's a new tax. The only two things on this ballot language that remain the same are the team names and the number 38 cents.
Don't we all want to keep the Royals in the stadiums for the next 40 years in Kansas City and Jackson County, Patrick?
Sure, why not? Kansas City is a great place to do business. The owners of these teams have made billions of dollars off of ticket sales, off of marketing, off of TV rights. They are perfectly able to do what they want with their teams. My point is they ought to pay for it themselves. They realize all the benefits. They realize all the benefits of ownership. They don't share any of that with taxpayers. They ought to pay the price of doing what they want.
Gary Sarnoff, is there any ballpark in America that was built exclusively by the team owners with no public dollars involved?
Most recently, Oracle Park in San Francisco. That was built with private funds. And before that, Dodger Stadium was built with private funds in 1962. And prior to that, you have to go all the way back to 1923, Yankee Stadium.
You know, I've often heard that there's no economic reports that justify this type of a deal and that there's no benefit to the taxpayers. And I would refute that. There are economic reports that say exactly the opposite. One of them is about the economic report of Levi Stadium, where they just did a study in 2023 looking back on the 10 years since Levi has been built. $468 million tax increases for Santa Clara, $546 million in indirect spending, 11,840 full-time jobs. All that is done as an economic analysis. So there is benefit. But I also want to say something else. We can try to reduce everything down to dollars and cents, but the city is about more than dollars and cents. You don't come to a city saying how much is the money. You come to the city saying, where do I want to live? And when you talk about where you want to live, you have to talk about things that bring you joy, pride, happiness, alternative opportunities to do things. Not just everything is reduced to dollars. Cities are built for our children. And when I was growing up, we played at Municipal Stadium. When my kids were growing up, it was at Kauffman. Now my grandkids want another place to play, to see another game as well. The whole thing has got to be looked at as a whole. And remember, this is really about 50 years of partnership that these teams have had with the county up to this point. It's worked out pretty well up to this point.
If I could, I'd like to come back to, thank you, Sly, to Becky's comment about taxes. And just to be clear, so the ballot language that she's describing indeed is a repeal of the tax. What we're asking taxpayers is to pay 3 cents penny, the same amount you spend today, but the two teams will commit almost $400 million of savings back to taxpayers. And what is that made up from? That's $200 million in savings from a parks tax, which I encourage all of you to be seeking to the county to find out exactly where that money is going to be spent. It's money from the insurance that the teams will pay themselves. And the Royals alone will spend more than $140 million in a community benefits agreement.
Becky.
You know, the problem with numbers, and when you talk about reducing it to numbers, for some people, it's the money they live on. And the more taxes you increase, the less choices they have on how they want to find their enjoyment. And it may not be sports. However, these numbers, it's not less tax dollars. Over 40 years, $50 million debt services, $2 billion for their returning $200 million back in. That's a pretty good deal. Plus, they need another $1 billion.
My colleague, by the way, Kanala Phillips, is here, and she's taking all of the questions that are going to come in here, and we're going to get to as many of those as possible. In fact, we've already got a lot of questions that have already come in from people who couldn't even be here, like one of our viewers, Jeff, who couldn't be here, and he says, how exactly does the new ballpark and the improvements to the Chiefs Stadium benefit the average person in Jackson County? Most people in the county can't afford to go to a game. Sarah, what's in it for them?
Yeah, I would tell you that regardless of where we play baseball, making our games affordable and accessible to all will always be a priority. What's in it for them, we're going to continue to ensure that we provide that access. We want to also find ways through a community benefits agreement that the team is providing incredible opportunity. And if I could just talk a little bit about what does that mean. We're in a day and age where we need to change the diversity and composition, not only of our fans, but in terms of workforce and opportunity. Because where you were born, whatever zip code you're born into, shouldn't control your destiny. The team seeks to ensure that we increase the number of minorities and women that participate in businesses and benefit from this, that we work towards providing health care and child care benefits, education, so that we can help people have more access to jobs, better paying jobs, and ultimately afford better homes for themselves.
Gary Sarnoff, we hear a lot in this debate about how this is going to benefit people of modest means. You write, baseball was once a game, it is now a business. The crowd that attends baseball games is now a corporate crowd. How is the mix of people attending games, how has that changed?
Well, it used to be you could take a family of a couple, family of 4 to a ball game because it was affordable. Tickets, parking, souvenirs, concessions is affordable. And now it's just become so pricey that really the best seats in the house can only be afforded by corporations. So people who don't want to take families to games, if they don't sit in the nosebleed sections of the bleachers, they could get tickets through their corporations or other connections.
Sarah, how is the mix of fans that would go to see a game if you have this Crossroads ballpark downtown be different than the ones who would come to the Truman Sports Complex?
Sure. Let me first comment. It is really important that we provide affordability and accessibility. Every year, we give approximately 50,000 tickets back to the community for free to allocate. In terms of planning for the future, it's like a sports and we're bigger than a sports company. We have to think of ourselves as an entertainment company. So think of it as there's got to be something for everybody there. We want to reach people of all demographics, of age, of race, to ensure that for the avid fan, there's something for you, and for the person that may be there just to seek something socially or have a memorable experience with their family, that we can provide those opportunities to everyone.
Okay. I want to hear questions from the audience. Kanala Phillips, our engagement person here at Kansas City PBS, has been taking all of those questions. Thank you so much for being with us here. Give us one of the first questions we have from our audience tonight.
Yes, so this viewer question is from John. And John asks, my wife and I are old enough to remember downtown baseball and football. They moved because of limited parking and crime. So what has changed?
What has changed?
The stadiums didn't move because of parking and crime. That was certainly one of the factors, but the teams outgrew the stadiums. The stadiums were outmoded. They did not meet the criteria for stadiums at that time that were being built. That's the reason they moved. And then they moved out to a suburban area at the time, Independence. Independence is much more vital now than it was at that time, and found a perfect spot and did something that hadn't been done and built the twin stadiums. That became something that was very instrumental in getting people from Kansas to come back and forth because of the highway system. But the fact of the matter is that there's nothing else out there in the stadium footprint that's going to draw people to it. So if you're not going to a game, you don't go there. So one of the things about moving downtown and renovating Arrowhead is to create more activity around both locations. For a baseball game, you need walk-up ticket buyers. You don't get walk-up ticket buyers at Truman. You'll have walk-up ticket buyers if you're downtown. For football, you want to have another type of experience, and you want to have people there.
It's true. You can't even get the bus to the Truman Sports Complex. Gary.
That the new stadiums that were built in 1972, that was also taken to a vote. In fact, on June 27th, 1967, Jackson County voted in favor of a bond to support new stadiums, $43 million. I just want to point that out.
Becky, how much is the parking issue, which was mentioned by the viewer, an issue for your campaign?
It's a huge issue. The idea and their attempts to minimize falls on deaf ears because we all have gone down there for other events and have experienced the parking issue. Another issue is, has there been studies on air quality and the exhaust and the increased traffic? Because I know if you're in a parking garage stuck for an hour, you take in a lot of exhaust fumes. But I also want to go back to the Eastern Jackson County, the Truman Sports Complex. The voters were not given what they were promised back at that election. They were promised development around the stadiums. And they never layered any incentives, any effort, because they considered that sprawl, and everybody was fighting sprawl.
Okay, I want to get Sarah to respond to that because I think it's interesting.
To go
okay, let's ask Sarah about that. Why couldn't there have been development around, say, the Kauffman Stadium during the time you were there?
Nick, I think your question that we started with was around parking, if you don't mind if I answer that first.
Absolutely.
So there are 40,000 parking spots downtown. There are 21... Excuse me, I appreciate that. If I could just finish, there's 21,000 parking spots within a 10-minute walk to where the new ballpark will take place. But let me talk a little bit further. It is our responsibility to ensure that our fans have the best experience. It's our responsibility to ensure that the businesses down there do not suffer because of an event at the ballpark. So what we're committed to throughout this process is we've conducted parking studies. We'll share those. We've committed to the Crossroads Community Association that will continue to do those. But this is we aren't planning for today. We're planning for our kids and our grandkids' future. So technology plays an incredible role. In today's day, you buy your ticket on your phone. You also buy your parking pass. There will be zone parking. You will know exactly how to get into downtown. It will direct you where to park. On top of that, to assure that people have clear signs, we will be responsible for construction mitigation. We'll have a traffic and parking management plan that'll be in place. And in addition, for any business that's down there, we will ensure that there's residential permit parking so that those businesses and the people that want to visit those places can get in and out easily.
It's interesting that we're having a conversation about parking downtown when I remember about 25 years ago, we had a conversation about there was nobody downtown. Things change. Things change. I'll also point out that if you want to live in a city that is growing, then there are going to inevitably be some growing pains, but we are smart enough to figure that out. There were 50,000 people downtown this past weekend. Big 12, MIA, Comic-Con, all in 3 different places downtown. They parked all over the place. Not to mention on Sunday, the Current game. And one of the women that went to the Current game was interviewed on the news and said, I parked in a garage downtown, no problem. I caught the shuttle down to the game, no problem. I was here in 10 minutes.
Patrick Tsui, Sean O'Byrne with the Downtown Council told a meeting of the Jackson County Legislature that T-Mobile Center was built with just 30 parking spaces and, quote, it repeatedly sells out. So people can find parking when they really want it. If they want to go to a Drake concert or they want to go to a St. Patrick's Day parade or a Chiefs parade, they'll find a parking space for that.
No, absolutely. If people want to do a thing, they make it work. Again, we're getting...
What's different about this?
Well, we're getting caught up in the minutia of technology or commitment to community. The point is, private owners should be able to do as they please with their team without hitting up taxpayers. Let me make a point about moving from the suburbs back to the city. This is a trend all over the country. In the 60s and the 70s, stadium moved out of the cities into the suburbs. Now, with the beginning of the Orioles in 1992, they want to move back into the city. Each time, they want to hit up taxpayers for subsidies, for sales taxes, for property taxes, because we have proven time and again to be suckers. We buy all the arguments. They build these huge stadia, and then when people balk at another payout, they say we're going to move. The number of teams that have threatened to move to Nashville alone, the Orioles, the Brewers, the A's, the Royals, of course, the White Sox, it's a scam. John Sherman, to his credit, John Sherman wants to do the right thing for his share owners and build an entertainment district downtown because teams don't generate enough wealth, so he wants to build hotels and restaurants, and that's wonderful. He ought to be able to do that. He ought to do it on his own dime.
Gary, the Royals are committed to going downtown. What is the actual trend, though, among teams these days in the last few years? Are teams moving downtown, or are they also saying our fans are in the suburbs, we're going to move to the suburbs?
It appears the most teams want to go downtown. I think most teams head downtown. Of course, you have Atlanta where they left downtown and moved to the suburbs. I just think downtown appeals to a lot of these teams for I guess various reasons. But I think the trend is to either stay downtown or move downtown.
When it comes to this new ballpark, the question, where do I park, is probably the one you seem to hear the most. The second is, where is the community benefits agreement? That's important to groups like Stand Up KC and KC Tenants that advocate for low-income workers and renters in Kansas City. Terrence Wise is with Stand Up KC. Terrence, what's your question for the panel? Can you come over here with me? Would that be okay with you? Stand up.
Definitely. You know, today we were forced to oppose the Royals and this new sales tax. And it's not a question of a sales tax. It's a question on April 2nd. Are we going to choose our families, our mothers, brothers, and sisters, the community, or are we going to choose the Royals and Chiefs? That's the question being called on April 2nd. And we're going to be voting no for our families and the community. My question, I'm sorry. My question is, can you explain your failure to meet our common sense demands for a strong CBA that benefits Kansas Cityans as a whole and that'll provide affordable housing and good living wage jobs? How have we failed so miserably in doing that?
Terrence, thank you so much. Okay. Who'd like to respond to that? Former Mayor Sly James.
You want to do it? Go
ahead.
Well, first of all, there is a strong community benefits agreement of $140 million. That's.
Let him answer.
You'll see it. You'll see it tomorrow. At the end of the day.
Okay. Please continue, Mayor.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it. You know, part of the problem is that, if I'm not mistaken, you walked out of the negotiations, but I might be wrong. But part of the problem is that we got over $900 million of various demands from various groups for various things. We can't do everything. So what we're doing is the best community benefits agreement that's ever been done in this city, the highest one in baseball ever.
Becky.
I have been to community meetings, forums, talks for the past 8 weeks, and every single meeting they say, we're going to have a community benefits agreement signed in a day or two. We're going to have a lease agreement signed in a day or two. We're going to have something with labor. 8 weeks, and they don't have that. So they're telling people that all over Jackson County.
Most of us, of course, are not in any of these rooms. Could you just give us a sense of why that might be?
Sure. I appreciate Becky's been in the room for 8 weeks. We've been in the room discussing this for 18 months. The Royals have been unwavering in their commitment to strong community benefits, and you have one chance to do this. And your chance, you got to get it right. And so as part of these conversations, we've engaged with numerous organizations. We've met with Chance. We've met with many of the people here today to hear their concerns. We've been presented, as Sly mentioned, with over $900 million of ask for a single team, for the Kansas City Royals. We can't do everything, but you bet we're going to do our best. So let me just talk about what we are committed to. We're committed to the highest minority workforce participation goals in all of Kansas City. We're committed to including them not just for jobs, but long term. We're committed to ensuring that as we increase minority participation, we provide them with the workforce development, tools, and training that they need. That starts with resources and education. We're committed to the Kansas City Public Schools, that they don't suffer throughout this process in any sort of revenue loss. We're committed to affordable housing, but in many ways, if we don't fix the other things to ensure that they have training and health care and child care benefits, All of those things that are in our unprecedented and historic CBA. So while Becky says we're waiting, you will see our community benefits agreement tomorrow.
Why is it taking so long, though?
It's taken so long because there's so many requests coming in at different times. And the diligence, we may not be working at the pace that everybody wants us to be, but we are working at a pace to ensure that when the voters go to vote before April 2nd, they have all the information that they need.
Okay, Robert Brown is with Kansas City Tenants. What is the lingering question, Robert, you would still like answered before Election Day? Would you mind joining me over here? Thank you so much.
Yes, my name is Robert Brown, and I'm a leader with the KC Tenants Union, and I live in the 3rd District, and I'm in the building for people 60 and over that are either on disability or Social Security. I live on a fixed income, and I know the sales tax would cost Jackson County residents $2 billion over the next 40 years. We know on top of that, the Royals say they would need another $700 million from city or state for this new stadium. What we don't know is how much this new stadium will actually cost or why we should have to pay for it. My question is, what is the total cost of this downtown stadium going to be? Give me a number. And why does John Sherman, a billionaire, and the Royals, a Major League franchise, need my money to do it?
Robert, thank you so much. Okay. All right, there's a lot in there. I know a lot of the pushers here. Is there a response to that?
I'm going to let him first answer in terms of the first part, and then I'll talk about John Sherman and the ask of taxpayers.
The stadium will cost $1 billion. The Royals are contributing $1.3 billion. The $700 million comes from other sources, and none of that happens without a yes vote on April 2nd. Here's why you do it, because the stadiums aren't owned by the teams. Stadiums are owned by the county. You need the tax dollars to maintain the stadiums. The tax dollars that are being paid now go to maintenance and repair on the stadiums. That's what they're for. And even with those tax dollars, it's still not enough to keep those stadiums in playing shape. Last year, the Chiefs put in 23 or 28 million. Royals have put in money every year as well. I think Mark Donovan said that since 2015 or 2017, the Chiefs have put in $150 million to maintain those stadiums over and above the tax dollars. So the tax dollars go to the stadium that the county owns. That's why you need tax dollars. The other thing, too, is you can say what you want, but at the end of the day, there are very few things that you enjoy in this city that aren't partially paid for by private dollars and tax dollars. The zoo is one. The aquarium is one. Union Station was one. Everything has some public-private partnership because neither the private sector nor the public sector can do the things that people want on their own. There has to be that partnership between the two. That's all we're asking for here. Same partnership we've had for the last 50 years.
Yeah, and Nick, if I may, the idea that John Sherman, the billionaire, as everyone's describing him as, is lining his pockets with profits. Let me talk to you about the John Sherman that many of you haven't had a chance to meet. John and Marnie Sherman have raised their family in Kansas City, built their businesses, and privately been giving back hundreds of millions of dollars. They're not looking for any credit. And when John and Marnie Sherman move on from this world, they're not intending to do anything greater than to leave this asset and all of its profits back to the city.
Becky.
You know, a lot of these other public financed and supported entities return money back. The problem with this is, with so much taxpayer investment in this, and in this case, and they keep throwing out the $1 billion, that's for their private real estate deal. We're talking, and the question one is about the stadium. On the stadium, the Royals have committed to about $100 million over the 40-year period. And the problem with this is also that in 2006, a lease agreement was in place, a CBA agreement was in place. All of these agreements were legally binding and in place. Kansas City had committed to how and what they were going to fund. The state of Missouri had committed to how and what they were going to fund. We don't have any of these answers, and it begs the question, why?
Well, what happens, though, if Kansas City or the state of Missouri looks at this and says, no, thank you, for adding the additional money necessary to build a downtown ballpark?
No tax that's being levied, and the teams will explore their options.
Thank you, Mayor James. I want to hear from Kanala Phillips, who has your questions in her hand. Kanala.
Hi. Okay, so we have a lot of people asking about how much this tax will actually cost them. Lisa asks, if I vote yes, how much will this tax cost me each year?
How much will it cost her, Mayor James?
An estimate of about $50.
Patrick, is that about
That's
right?
the estimate that I've heard.
Well, the problem is Kansas City's tax rate in some places is already over 10%. The reason why the sales tax is such a bad way to raise any kind of revenue is because people shop across boundaries. So fewer people will shop in Jackson County if they can get the same goods elsewhere. We already see that with State Line, right? You see all the liquor stores on the Missouri side because the rules are different, all the medical places on the Kansas side because the laws are different. So what we're doing is we're chasing people out of the city. We're making it too expensive to live here. Let me add one other thing about the CBA. I do not envy your task dealing with a CBA and all the community groups and all their demands. I am sure at the end of the day you feel like you're being fleeced because so many groups stand up and make demands that may be unreasonable. But understand, the best community benefits agreement is for the Royals and the Chiefs to pay their taxes, all of them. That is how we all benefit.
Kanala?
So we've heard the Royals say that they can't stay at the K because it suffers from concrete cancer. The Chiefs president recently told reporters, quote, one team got a good batch of concrete and one team didn't. Do you agree with that assessment? Did the K receive a bad batch of concrete that Arrowhead did not?
Okay.
I'll actually comment on that first.
Yes. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. I personally wouldn't have chosen to use the word batch, but I will tell you that it should come as no surprise to the county and the county executive that there has been a report since 2007 that has shown significant deterioration in concrete cancer. As a matter of fact, in 2006, they tested 59 samples. Of the 59 samples, 56 of them had concrete cancer. So the taxpayers' dollars, what you're paying for today, is actually to repair concrete. As we look to make an investment in the future, why would we continue to want to ask taxpayers to support a building that is deteriorating? But I also just want to be remiss. We're not saying that we're solely leaving because of concrete cancer. There are a number of things we're leaving. We're leaving because we have to have a vision and a plan for the future. We have to assure that our team has the amenities that it needs to perform at the highest level and that we continue to compete and assure that our fans have the amenities they deserve.
Gary Sarnoff, we're told Kauffman Stadium, at more than 50 years old, has outlived its usefulness. Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox, is 122 years old. Wrigley Field, home of the Chicago Cubs, is 120 years old. Why aren't those cities demolishing those ballparks and building something new? What is the difference? What is the difference there?
Well, I think those ballparks are famous. They're ancient. They have a lot of character. And they're nostalgic, which appeals to baseball fans. They've put a lot of money in them to refurbish them, to keep them going. And they've got great character. You have the Green Monster at Fenway Park. You got the Ivy at Wrigley Field. So that's the difference. And I think also about Kauffman Stadium when it was built, when it opened its doors in 1973, it was state-of-the-art. It was the best baseball stadium in America. However, and it continued to be through the 1980s and into the 1990s. However, when stadiums like Camden Yards and other new stadiums were built, the fans kind of changed from loving a futuristic ballpark to a nostalgic ballpark. So I think that's the difference.
Mayor James.
You know, this idea that people are leaving to go to Kansas or elsewhere because of the price of goods is really incorrect. The population of Kansas City is the highest it's been ever. It's 500,000. Not only do the people in Jackson County pay the sales tax, everybody who drives through Jackson County pays the sales tax. Everybody who comes into town from someplace else for a meeting to pay the sales tax. All the million people who went to the rally for the Chiefs pay the sales tax. The people who were down at Union Station for the World Series parade pay the sales tax. And there were more people in those positions at that time than live in Kansas City, period. So at the end of the day, a lot of things that you hear are just not true. One of the things is that when you have to hear this and you have to understand the source of the information, there were a lot of things said about the airport too. One of the things that Mr. Toohey said about the airport was that it would be fewer flights. The exact opposite has happened. There's more flights all the time. Southwest just added like 10 new flights. Flight service has been increased. All of these things have to be judged in a way that is basically fair, and a lot of them were judged in advance based on political philosophy or economic philosophy, but not looked at after the fact.
Thank you. Patrick.
So, first of all, that report you published, Mr. Mayor, is that public?
What?
The report you just held up.
That was the.
May I have a copy?
Yes.
Sure.
May I have that copy?
No.
But it's public.
Please don't read from it,
Okay,
Patrick.
no, I won't read for it, but I just want to make sure it's publicly available because my understanding was it had been. So no, I never predicted the number of flights coming and going from Kansas City. The point was we were spending a lot of money to build fewer gates, which is absolutely true. But sorry, one other thing. The population of Kansas City has been stagnant for about 50 years. We may be the highest ever, but it's by a smidge. Kansas City needs to focus on growing our population, being a good place to live, and increasing sales taxes and giving away property tax, sales tax, income tax to everybody who wants to build a hotel or stadium is not the way we grow.
Sarah Torville with the Royals.
I won't comment on property tax because I know that's a very sensitive topic for all of us, our property taxes. But I think Patrick is leading many people here to think that there's no economic benefit from these two teams, when in fact the Chiefs alone generated $993 million of impact. But what did Jackson County get from that? $572 million of impact. So I'm struggling to understand that you say that the taxpayers are not benefiting, but indeed they are, because the money that's going right back into their community, into their stores, into their restaurants.
So it's not just a matter of what the teams generate. It's you subtract that from what taxpayers are paying to get it. It is a net loss for taxpayers. And it's not just these stadiums. It's stadiums around the country.
Okay. Ask you, what stadiums around the country?
Thank you. Sarah.
I just want to understand, can you talk more specifically about which projects have not delivered, have delivered a net loss?
In Kansas City?
No. You talked about around the country. Which sports projects?
No, the economic... Excuse me, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
No, the economic literature is very clear. The subsidies don't pay off for the taxpayers. Yes, the teams generate money, but it is less than what the taxpayers have put into it. That's how you look at economic impact. You just don't look at the spending. You're like, what did taxpayers give to get that income?
Sure.
Okay. Becky, I know you've been trying to get in. Thank you.
This is a bigger picture about, they talk about 500,000 people in Kansas City. Well, the metro area is 2.3, 2.6 million. And all of that area is enjoying the benefit of these teams, and Jackson County's paying for it solely. That's not right.
But that's really not accurate. Jackson County's not paying for all of these projects, so you're not.
$3 billion for your new stadium.
Okay, we have a disagreement on this.
But again, we have our facts wrong. She just said we're going to pay $3 billion for our stadium. We have said publicly that our stadium will cost $1 billion. We're asking Jackson County, that contribution will be about $350 million. The team itself, the team ownership, will put approximately $300 million into the stadium. So first of all, it's not a $3 billion stadium. It's a $1 billion stadium. And we are not asking taxpayers for $3 billion. It's not true. What?
The Jackson County executive's budget on this, $50 million.
He's in the audience. Okay.
Wave your hand if I'm misstating it. $50 million a year debt service payment for 40 years. Let's do the math. 50 million times 40 is $2 billion, and they still have another billion to get from the city.
I want to move on to something else. One of the concerns people have is, cast your minds back 15 months ago, the Royals come out with 14 sites that could be their new ballpark, including one near the 18th of May Jazz District, one in North Kansas City, one in the West Bottoms near Hy-Vee Arena. Why does this site, on top of the former Kansas City Star Press Pavilion building next to T-Mobile Center, beat out every other place that you looked at?
Well, respectfully, Nick, we didn't look at 14. Over the years, 14 different sites have been considered. This particular site has actually been considered many different times that predated this ownership group. But the opportunity to move in downtown, where you have the incredible density that Mayor James has spoken about, where you have the connection not just to the crossroads, not just to Power and Light, but it's a connection to 18th and Vine. It's about connecting neighborhoods, not neighborhood. It's about...
Okay. No, please, thank you. 6 months ago, Sarah, the Royals shortlisted to 2 sites, one in North Kansas City, one east of City Hall in the East Village. What happened behind the scenes that this site, that wasn't even suggested at the time, would be the one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have to consider what is going to be the financial commitment that goes into finding the right site. And the East Village is a great site. And on paper, it looks like it's this great land. If you moved to the East Village, we would have been displacing people from their homes. The East Village...
Please let her speak. Let her speak. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
We'll take a breath and we'll continue on.
Thank you. So this is about coming into downtown where we can continue to spur economic growth, where we can do great things. I just want to acknowledge the Crossroads because there's many people in here and we have an incredible amount of empathy. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we wish the order of operations had been different. We are committed not just for the community benefits that I talked about, but to a Crossroads community benefits that will ensure that any small business, whether they're a tenant or a business owner, is taken care of. We're committed to a commitment in the Crossroads Community Improvement District to ensure safety and crime is addressed. We're committed to ensuring that the culture and the arts and the street are preserved, that we're protecting the artists and the entertainers.
Okay, thank you. Patrick.
Okay, so here's my frustration with this whole issue, is it's on the ballot prematurely. All these things should have been decided before it went to ballot. The teams rushed to get it on the ballot, and they can't answer a lot of questions. And I want to take you at your word, but these things should all be in contracts and enforceable. And one other thing that you mentioned before, if this is voted down, the threat is the teams are going to leave. The teams aren't going anywhere. I've lived in Kansas City long enough to know that if this is defeated, John Sherman will be right back at the table with the county, maybe a little chastened, and he will work on all these things, and we'll be voting on this again in a year. And it may not be a deal that I like next time, but it will probably, it almost has to be better than what we're looking at today.
Mayor James.
You ever met John Sherman? You ever talked to John Sherman about this? So how the heck do you know what he's going to do if this vote fails?
Because I'll tell you.
At the end of the day, the reason...
Okay, thank you, thank you. Let's hear our panelists. Thank you. Thank you.
At the end of the day, East Village was rejected for 4 reasons. Number one, the highway at that area is a total mess. It would have had to have been rebuilt. Number two, the East Village would have required an entertainment district around it. No reason to do that when you're a half mile away from Power and Light. Number 3, farther away from transportation hubs like the streetcar. And number 4, it's not just housing, it's low-income housing that's there and a couple of shelters that would have had to have gone, and that was something that he didn't want to do. And while we're talking about John Sherman, let me just say this. John Sherman has put hundreds of kids through college on his own dime. And while everybody wants to vilify him, while everybody wants to talk nonsense...
Thank you.
While everybody wants to talk nonsense, most of the people saying this stuff have never met the man, never had a conversation with him, never had to work with him.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to try and hear the panelists. I want to hear from Kanala. We have a lot of questions coming in from our audience.
A lot of questions.
Let's get through these.
So folks want to know, why were these initiatives combined? What are the benefits of those? And another person is asking, what if they're in favor of the tax, but not of the proposed location?
So how do they vote? How do they vote? Becky?
They vote no. And I want to add, that this process did not adhere to good government. They were in negotiations. They went around the process to get around Frank White's insistence that is, in his opinion, the current lease did not serve Jackson County taxpayers. And as he negotiated to try to get a better deal for the taxpayers, in his opinion, they could not come to terms, so they took it around him to the Jackson County legislature, put it on the ballot with no signed legally binding agreements, and that should go back to Frank White to do his job and allow him to negotiate.
Sarah?
I think Becky used the term good government. Good government engages with people. The county executive has had a proposal on his table for almost 2 years. There's been a lack of engagement. There's been a lack of interest to move the conversations forward. And at every point when he asked us to reconsider and hold things off, and we obliged by that on 2 different occasions, we were met with the same resistance to ignore it. So I applaud the county legislators who didn't go behind him, and we didn't put it on the ballot. They chose to put it on the ballot.
For decades, we have gone to Kauffman Stadium to see the Royals play. What happens to the Kauffman name if this new ballpark is built in the Crossroads? Does the K disappear?
Does it, Sarah?
So Ewing Kauffman, his legacy will be with us wherever we go. We have not decided what the ballpark would be called, but the history, both in Ewing Kauffman as well as the historic monuments, the fountains, the crowns, all the things that we love will all be part of this ballpark.
Patrick already bridged this question, but it is a lot on people's minds. What happens if voters say no to the tax on April 2nd? What happens then, Mayor James?
I think I'll say exactly what Mark Donovan has said and what John Sherman has said. If the taxpayers say no, then they'll look at all their options. And all of those options are available to them. And if you think, let me just say this, there's been 4 teams that have moved, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years. Every one of them has moved because of stadiums.
Gary Sarnoff, how often is it? We always hear these threats everywhere around the country. How often does it really happen? And are they mainly idle threats?
Well, it hasn't happened very often in recent years. Of course, it did happen in the NFL with the San Diego Chargers. They were voted down for a new stadium, so they packed up to and moved to LA. But I think it's a threat that does need to be taken seriously, because I understand that Utah just passed a bill and they are going to build a major league stadium in Salt Lake City. And no doubt they will be lobbying for a Major League Baseball team to transfer.
I'm a fan of both teams, have been my whole life. I take my children, grandchildren, and I am offended that after 50 years, the taxpayers have been good partners. They funded these teams, and that they would respond with, if you don't give us our money, we're leaving. What kind of partnership is that?
During a recent meeting, all right, thank you. During a recent interview with KSHB, Chiefs President Mark Donovan was asked what the team's plan might be if the sales tax fails. He responded this way: I think they would have to include leaving Kansas City. Is that an option the Royals are considering, Sarah?
I would echo the sentiment. I mean, our hope, we've been partners for 50 years. Becky's right. Our hope is that we stay partners with Jackson County for another 50 years. I will tell you, excuse me, Patrick, if the vote does not pass, we will consider all of our options.
Kinala.
So, your question, will Patrick leave us his private cell phone number so we know who to blame if the Royals and Chiefs leave town?
All right.
Believe me.
Are you willing to give us your Sly James already gave you his report. Now you're going to give us your cell phone number.
Let me tell you, if I had that much power in this city, it'd be much better run. Here's the frustration watching this that everybody in Jackson County is feeling, which is the name of the committee suggests that there's a threat that they're leaving. The name of this event suggests that there's a threat that they're leaving. But when asked, are you leaving? They simply say, we'll consider all our options. Now, of course they will. Of course, any organization would. But they're here for years more. And the reality is, If this is voted down, the negotiations do not end there.
John Sherman, speaking on sports talk radio station 610 last week, stated, quote, there's lots of cities that would love to have these franchises. Gary, who would be clamoring for the Royals?
Well, like I said, Salt Lake City's building a new ballpark. But I understand that Nashville is also in the mix, and so is Carolina.
You know, it's very interesting that he would characterize it this way. The whole idea, does anybody believe that if the teams wanted to leave, that they would go through this mess? They said to keep them here in town. They want to be in Jackson County. They said that from day one. The bottom line is simply this. If they wanted to leave, they wouldn't bother with this. They'd just simply go through the process and leave.
I'm sorry. I've got a few years left on my mortgage. If I could convince Jackson County to give me $1 billion to stay in Waldo, I absolutely would do it.
Please, Sarah.
Restate. I mean, Patrick keeps assuming that we're asking for something more when we're actually giving back. I want to reemphasize that taxpayers will receive $200 million back in benefits from the parks tax, from the insurance, on top of community benefits that don't exist today. So, none of it's what? It doesn't add up.
Yeah. All we know from this election is that if it passes, Jackson County institutes a new 40-year sales tax. That is all that is, no pun intended, concrete about this. Everything you're saying, and again, about the cost of the stadium, about community benefits, about return, I want to believe you. I need to see it in writing. And the people of Jackson County need to see it in writing. We should not be voting on this.
Let's...
Go ahead, Sly.
Come back and say that you saw it in writing and you're fine with it?
I voted today, Mayor. So unfortunately,
I figured as much. But I just wanted to know what your position would be. You keep on saying you want to see it in writing, and I wanted to know if that's going to change your position.
I said earlier, if this is renegotiated, it will be a better deal for Jackson County than whatever it is we have now. But it will still be worse than if the Chiefs and Royals just paid their taxes. So it's not a matter of making me happy. It's a matter of getting a deal that is better than the nothing we are talking about right now.
Some people say, why the hurry? The current sales tax, which helps pay for the upkeep of the Truman Sports Complex, doesn't expire until 2031. So don't you still have another 7 years to tweak the plan, possibly consider a different site? Sarah?
In the history, they've never waited. In 1990, they renegotiated leases 7 years before the lease expired. In 1996, they renegotiated leases 9 years before the leases expired. We are in 2024. The lease expires 7 years. You don't wait until it expires.
Becky.
They do that because they always want more money. It's never enough. You agree to a lease and a term, and then they come back early because they want renovations or want some new thing.
But they say it's not more money because it's still a 3/8% sales tax as it is now.
See, that's a ridiculous statement, and it can go on forever and ever and ever. When you're this 40-year tax is going to generate $792 million. You're going to pay over 40 years $2 billion for that debt.
Okay.
That's no good deal.
I want to be respectful of your time. Kanala, do you have a barn burner question for us that could conclude this, that people would be standing up with rapturous applause, dabbing their eyes with Kleenex? Okay. Do you have something like that? Okay.
So Richard says he's heard about demands for affordable housing as a part of the community benefits agreement. He asks, what about the teams making at least 40% of the seats available at an affordable price, like $10 for a Royals game or $20 for a Chiefs game? That's reasonable, isn't it?
Okay. What would happen with the ticket prices? Are they going to be more expensive when you move downtown?
We will always have a price point that allows every person into the team, including the 50,000 tickets that we donate back into the community.
I saw an early ticket order form today from the Royals. I forget how many dates, but I think it's like 30 dates of half-price tickets. So they are doing things to do it.
The main reason, Sarah, for people to vote yes in your estimation on this tax on April 2nd is what?
I know that many of the people in the room love the Royals and the Chiefs. This isn't a decision about baseball, downtown baseball. This is a decision about keeping the two teams here for the next 50 years.
And the main reason for voting no, Patrick, is what?
People of Jackson County need to demonstrate that they've got some dignity and they don't want to be treated out of fear and threats from a team that has benefited so much by being among us.
But there's another voice for why you want to vote yes, and that comes from former Mayor Sly James. The final word on why you should vote yes, Mayor James?
Because this city is made up of a lot of divergent parts, a lot of memories, a lot of feelings, a lot of pride. And these teams are part of that. They've been here. We all have pride in them. It's the one thing that we can unite and talk about at the water cooler on Monday after a game. And there's no discussion of politics or divisions. These teams bring people together.
I just cannot get away from the fact that a lot of people are not interested in sports and can't afford tickets and never will be able to afford tickets. And that's a fact. And we should have a discussion about how we want to spend $3 billion as a community. The other point is for them to threaten fans who care about them and who buy their merch and season tickets is not a way to be a good partner. And people are offended by it.
All righty. And that is our stadium debate, courtesy of the Royal Sarah Torville, former Mayor Sly James, baseball historian Gary Sarnoff, from the No campaign, Becky Nason, Show Me Institute senior fellow Patrick Tuohy. And thank you. And I know we had some raucous time together, but boy, thanks for letting us get through it all. We're very appreciative of that. Early in-person voting is now underway. We're going to know the results soon. Will it be Team Yes or Team No? We'll find out on Election Day, April 2nd. I'm Nick Haynes from all of us at Kansas City PBS and our debate sponsors, American Public Square and the Kansas City Library. Be well, keep calm, and carry on.